I extend you a very warm welcome to our Wesley Impact highlights. While we're now well into 2013, we're looking back to some of our most popular shows from 2012. We met guest Trish Jenkins during Anti-Poverty Week late last year. This mother of two knows all too well what it's like to lose it all. Caught up in wealth creation, Trish was sentenced to 2.5 years in jail, to be suspended to 8 months for being the scapegoat of a trader fraudster. Stripped of pride, dignity and self-worth, Trish shares what it's like to be behind bars and to know how God can help you to find a life of freedom, even inside prison. She now tours across Australia to warn others and to share the love of Christ. Lovely to have you here. Let me start right away in the book. You say, your kingdom is still only a house of cards. Any moment it can be taken from you. And in a way, you know that, don't you?
I sure do. It just happened so quickly. And my husband and I had worked so hard, and we'd built a property portfolio, accumulated property, and been really careful with our money and done a lot of giving, and we diversified because we thought that was a sensible thing to do. Gave our money to a currency trader to trade with, and that went well for a while, and he asked me to be a contact person for other people because he was so busy. And I did that, and that worked well for 1.5 years, and then suddenly he stopped paying, and it was my job to tell everybody we were not getting our money. And after 3 months of having to do this and the stress and people needing their money, I caved under pressure, and I had money come in that I was supposed to give him, and I just felt like I had to fix the problem. I needed to pay people, and I used that to pay people instead of giving it to him, which is what I should have done.
Trish, yeah. you say something quite straightforward, really. You say God is somehow using the judge as an instrument, really, to actually say something, that the judge becomes God's instrument, if you like. And what do you mean by that?
Well, it really tickles me, Keith, because a couple of days before I went to court, in my prayer time, God really showed me that I was going to go in. Now, I could have got a sentence of anything from a fine to what I got, to the extent of what I got. I got the heavy end. And he showed me that it was part of his plan and that there was work for me to do, which sounds very spiritual, but I really felt that conviction and I had a confidence. And so, as far as I'm concerned, that judge had nothing to do with my sentence except to be God's mouthpiece. Whether he intended that or not, he is instrumental in the extension of the kingdom of God, both in prison and outside. And
you're open about your faith all through this journey.
I was. The thing is, you know, the strength that I drew on to hide it would be to disrespect it and to invalidate it. And I needed God. It's a matter of life and death in a place like that. It's so serious and it's so dangerous that I had to cling to my faith and to a relationship with God. And, you know, God shows up. When you honour him and you trust him, he shows up. So really, when you come to the end of yourself at the point of despair, as it were, that's where God meets you. That is where God meets you. And I had to get to the point, you know, everybody prays for the thing that they believe is going to be the answer, whether it be finance or healing or anything like that. And I got to the point of surrender where, you know, God, I don't want to go to jail, but I surrender my will to yours. And by doing that, in that moment, there was a freedom and a burden that lifted off, and I could actually look for... It was scary, don't get me wrong, and it was hard. But I really felt a sense of purpose. Let's hold you at that point. Just hold on for that point there. We're going to talk further. And I'd like to welcome today's performer on stage. Trisha's journey is more than an investment story gone wrong. Her journey is one of a deep place, a soul-searching, calling on God and waiting for him to help her in those difficult places. Here's Belle Morrison with her song, In Time With You.
Of trust where I am free, where I simply follow where you lead, 'cause I a way just right for me. Each choice I make will form the path I lead. So help me trust in you with all my heart, yeah. In every step, oh Lord, direct my path. 'Cause I want to move each step in time with you and follow close to every move. Don't want to race ahead, lag behind. Just want to move in time with you. There's a path that seems so right to me. Hey, yeah, it's empty instead. 'Cause only when I walk with you am I truly free. I want to move each step in time with you and follow close. Every move, don't want to race ahead, lag behind. Just want to move in time with you. 'Cause I want to move each step in time with you and follow close. Every move, don't want to race ahead, lag behind. Just want to move in time with you.
To commemorate 200 years of faith and pioneering care in Australia, Wesley Mission has released a publication documenting its work in the community.
Everyone needs a little rest. Everyone needs a little joy.
For more information on today's people, today's story, you can contact us on 02 9263 5555 or email us at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
Now, if you want to know more about Belle's music, her details are on our website all this week. Now, Trish, back to this journey in jail. You say that it changed your view of prosperity, which is an interesting thing because, to some extent, prosperity or whatever money was something that had been real to you before that. What happened that made things change? What actually changed?
Well, it had, and the biblical principles of finance, they work, they do. But Jesus also talks about the true riches. And when I was in prison, I couldn't call on any lawyers to help anyone else. I couldn't call on my contacts. I couldn't do anything, financial to help people. But the true riches of God are people. And I got to know the most beautiful women who might not have necessarily looked a certain way on the outside, but when you're in among them and you're one of them and you get to know their stories, you just see the value of people and you can love them for who they are. And when you have impacted someone, when you've shared the love of God with someone, there's nothing like it. When you see that light come on in their eyes, there's nothing like it.
Trish, for a period of time, I used to be part of a pastoral team in a prison, and I know that one of the dangers of Christian people going into prison is that they go into themselves. There can be a denial, there can be, oh, I wasn't really guilty of this, and all of that, and stay in their cell and don't associate with other people. Was that temptation there for you?
Not at all, no. I just felt a sense of, for me to waste that opportunity would be to waste my whole life. God had put me in a position where I could make a difference and I was determined not to waste it. And shame is a terrible thing, and shame keeps people silent. It makes them feel like they don't have the right to offer the gifts that are in their life, and that's a lie. And these poor women who were in there, who were Christians, they felt ashamed and frightened. And sometimes it's a bit of intimidation because you're worried about what other people think, and the rough and tough ones and the God haters. But when you look at people as Christ looks at them. And many times I had plenty of opportunities for offence, but many times I would pray, God, show me your perspective of this woman or that officer or different ones. And he would. And I would see them so differently that I couldn't help but share the love of God with them however I could. I guess I'm a rescuer by nature.
What would you say then to somebody who is tuning in, talking to us and saying, I'm in the same kind of situation, I'm going to face court, I'm going to face trial? What would you say to them?
I would say to them, you're going to go through this whether you go with God or without God. Choose God and trust him. Let go of what you think God should do and totally trust in his purpose. Ask him for his perspective and to see people as he sees them and to give you his heart for them. And it will be a trial that you go through, a tribulation that you go through that will end up as a treasure in your life, which is why I called the book Treasures of Darkness. Treasure isn't found laying on the street, an easy street. It's dirty and it's covered in muck and it's hard work to find it. But when you can look at things differently, no matter what your situation, there is treasure to be found if you don't wallow in self-pity and you don't get all angry and upset about it, but you look for God's perspective and look for the good, and it will emerge and you will be better for it.
Just in a sentence or two, what about the future?
The future, I just want to keep making a difference. You know, I speak to Christian groups and I encourage them, and I speak to secular groups about fraud prevention and finding profit in their bottom line by treating their people much, much better. That there's treasure in their people, and whatever I can do to make a difference. And you know what? If my story, a thing that I was ashamed of, is the reason that I have a platform. So I'm thankful to the judge because he's actually given me a platform to make a bigger difference in the world. How good's that?
Look, Trish, thanks ever so much for being willing to share your story, your journey. And not only should we say thanks for joining us, but we shall think of you as you look into the future to see what God has in the future for you.
Thank you, Keith.
Thanks very much for joining us, and we'll be back in just a moment.
It's been 200 years since the first Methodists met in Australia. To celebrate 2 centuries of faith and pioneering care, CEO and presenter Reverend Dr. Keith Garner takes us back to where it all began.
But we don't begin here at the heart of London. We begin in a town in the north of England.
In this fascinating narrative, Reverend Garner chronicles the history of the life and times of the founder of Methodism, John Wesley. This fresh and thought-provoking documentary takes us on a journey throughout the United Kingdom, beginning in John Wesley's hometown of Epworth.
John Wesley was born here on the 17th of June, 1703.
This 1-hour DVD travels onto his education years and beginnings of social justice in Oxford, to his final years in London. For more information on John Wesley, the man and his mission, call 02 9263 5555 or email us at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
At Wesley Mission, we help people who feel they've been somehow swallowed up in a black hole of debt. Bronwyn is one client who says she should have got help sooner. Let's take a look at her story.
I actually was married at 18. Actually bought the family home at the time when I was 17. Rented it out for 12 months. Got married, moved in, had it paid off when I was 31. We extended it, had the 4 children, everything was lovely, and then 2001 went through quite a nasty separation and divorce due to what I believed was a drug problem on my husband's part. It sort of started to add up in the end. It got to a point where I said, look, it's the family, or it's whatever it is that's keeping you from the family, you make the choice. So he made the choice. So I stayed there for another couple of years on my own with the 4. Met a fellow, remarried probably too quickly, went into a business with him, mortgaged my house for the business, and that's when everything went downhill. I fell pregnant to my then second husband with twin sons. Lost those boys stillborn at 28 weeks pregnant. Went through funerals, went through issues with the children, dealing with grief, myself dealing with grief, my then husband dealing with grief. 3 months after I lost the twins, I fell pregnant with Jacob. After Jacob was born, the business had gone down. The sheriffs came to basically kick me out of the house. They said, you've got 2 weeks, we have to change the locks, everything needs to be sold from the shop, from the house, to recoup hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. So I said to Jacob's father at the time, look, he was 4 months old with multiple issues, facing a lot of surgeries, and I said to him, look, I have to go on my own, you will have to move out. My main thing at the time was finding somewhere to live. And then because of those circumstances, I got moved up on the housing waiting list. And 3 months after that, I was given the option of, you can have a 4-bedroom house at St Mary's. That's now 4 years ago. Having a child like Jacob, where, because of his tube feeding and his attachments to his machine, his breathing machine, there are a lot of things like filters and electricity that it uses to run the machines and that I have to fork out for. And obviously, next to groceries, they're the priority. It'd be approximately a year ago, when I got into the housing arrears, they sort of said to me, look, your only option here is A, we're going to take you to tribunal, and B, you need to seek a financial counsellor. Went for the initial appointment and was given Joanne Hunt. Felt so comfortable with her the first day I was there. At that point, there was hope. I've got something to work towards. Through the help of Wesley and through the help of Jo, she made it very clear that she wanted to be the advocate for me and that I was to take a step back from everything, which is just, the weight of the world has just gone off my shoulders, and I think if it wasn't for her, I really don't know where I would be. I am proud of all my children. We're a close family, we stick together, we have our moments. The pride thing is not giving the kids everything they want, but giving the kids what they need to have, and through better management we can do it all slowly. Jo's become, to me, more than a counsellor. She's become a really good friend, and if I don't get in to see her, I know I can pick up the phone and ring her. How you going, Jo? It's Bronwyn Rushton. I just want to run something by you. I've got a problem. Leave it with me. Don't you get involved. I'll fix it. And it's really, really good to know that she's been there 110%. I sit back and think I've really got someone here that's working with me, and she makes me feel so comfortable.
Today I'd like to take another peek into Luke's Gospel and particularly focus on the feeding of the 5,000. You find it in Luke chapter 9. Now, all 4 Gospels tell this incident, so it marks a very important part of the ministry of Jesus and also the climax of the ministry of Jesus in the Galilee. So I'm reading from Luke chapter 9, beginning at verse 10. When the apostles returned, they reported to Jesus what they'd done. Then he took them with him, and they withdrew themselves to a town called Bethsaida. But the crowds learned about it and followed him. He welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who needed healing. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, "Send the crowd away so they can go on to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and lodging, because we're in a remote place here." He replied, "You give them something to eat." They answered, "We only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, unless we go and buy food for all this crowd." About 5,000 men were there. But he said to his disciples, "Have them sit down in groups of about 50 each." The disciples did so, and everyone sat down. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them to the disciples to set before the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. Now, the ministry of Jesus still has a year or more to go, and he's coming to the close of a particular mission tour in the Galilee, which seems to have been well received by people. The only thing that sits uncomfortable in that story to date is the reaction of Herod preceding the feeding of the crowd. Now, in much Jewish thought, banquets and meals are important. They become symbols of the feast of God. So it's not surprising that a people who'd learnt to live with little should picture God's new world and their hopes of the future in terms of a feast. Let me make a number of observations that I hope you find helpful. The feeding of the crowd seals his sense of oneness with the people. It really binds them. When you have a meal with somebody, it binds you in a relationship with them. The miracle is not intended to be seen as Jesus forcing people to believe. There's no sense of that. If you see this miracle, you'll all believe, because it's not done to prove anything in any way whatsoever. 12 basketfuls remain, one for each apostle, symbolizing perhaps the continuing sustenance of God's new people. Now, the disciples' part is so important. For at first, they wanted to send the crowd away. They did this with people, you remember, children and people in need. Send them away, that was their reaction. But you see, that would be to miss the point. It's Tom Wright who says Jesus invites the disciples into partnership here by telling them to give the crowd something to eat. So they're invited to share with him in his ministry. And so these puzzled disciples are given an insight into his much deeper ministry. And he has a message for you and for me if we're prepared to receive it, not least a message of concern for all people, even such a crowd. We've heard today a story of someone who realized that the situation that she was in became a place where she could share faith and have a ministry. And Jesus knew that the disciples too would have a ministry. And as they observed him feeding the crowd, and when you think of a crowd of this size, it was a crowd made up of all kinds of people. And yet Jesus was interested, concerned to reach out to them in their need and to feed them. And in a sense, that's what Jesus does for you and I. So the feeding of the crowd, yes, it is a miracle. There's no question at all that we have loaves and fishes. We have a great crowd. We have an enormous amount left over. But it seems to me that Jesus being prepared to feed them, his willingness to share his ministry with the disciples in saying that they too are going to be there reaching out to others, is as important as anything else in this wonderful miracle story in the New Testament. So Jesus is prepared to feed the crowd, and he's prepared, does, and reaches out to people even today.
If you would like to know more about today's topic or for more on Keith's message, contact Keith by writing to Wesley Mission, Post Office Box A5555, Sydney South 1235, or email impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
Many thanks for tuning in. Trisha's story shows how our darkest times can bring forth unexpected treasures. Until next week, goodbye and God bless you.
I spent so much of my time finding the best way to hide my secrets. I bottled all of my shame, closeted sorrow and pain. In the deepest part of my heart, I thought that nobody knew. But you see these hurts, so I'm crying to you. There's a song in my heart is rising, like the dawn of a new day, hope shining in, and the sorrow and fear is subsiding. As I reach out to you, Lord, my healing begins. I spent too much of my time in solitary confines, in the darkness, but you have turned on a light and taken fear out of night. In the deepest part of my heart, I thought that nobody saw, but you're breaking down